Hello folks, I am Al for today's news. I will be bringing you world news, interesting news to keep you entertained, and news to keep you informed. And I try to have something for everybody here. Anyway, first thing I got for you from the Associated Press. U.S. bombers fly over Bosnia in sign of support amid continued secessionist threats.
Sarajevo, Bosnia-Herzegovina, AP, a pair of U.S. Air Force B-1B Lancer bombers flew low over Sarajevo and several other Bosnian cities on Tuesday as a sign of support amid continued secessionist threats by the staunchly pro-Russia Bosnian Serb leader Milorad Dodik. Addition, the aircraft also participated in a joint military event in the northeastern town of Tuzla with Bosnia's multi-ethnic army and U.S. Army Special Forces. The flights were a demonstration of a rock-solid commitment to the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Bosnia, said the U.S. ambassador to the Balkan country, Michael Murphy. Murphy added that United States remains steadfast and committed to the relationship with the Bosnian armed forces in the face of political stability within Bosnia and acute threat from malign actors outside the country. Dodik, who is the president of Bosnia's Serb-run part, Republika Srpska, has repeatedly advocated for the breakup of the country and voiced his admiration for Russian President Vladimir Putin. Earlier this month, he traveled to Moscow to meet with Putin and reiterate his support for Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. He reacted angrily to the flight over Bosnia by U.S. bombers, accusing Washington of disrespecting the country's territorial integrity and treating it as a guinea pig that they can suffocate and cut off its air supply for as long as they want. A U.S.-brokered peace deal in 1995 ended a nearly 4-year-long internecine war in Bosnia that left at least 100,000 people dead and millions homeless. It left the country deeply divided between its three main ethnic groups, Muslim Bosniaks, Orthodox Serbs, and Catholic Croats. The Dayton Peace Accords split Bosnia into two highly autonomous entities, Republika Srpska and one dominated by mostly Bosniaks and Croats, linked by shared, statewide institutions.
Let's see here, and there's more to read on that if you want to read the rest of it. Not much more. And I'm going to my next one now. This one here from Newsweek. Wagner troops leaving Bakhmut replaced with Conscripts Kyiv.
A spokesperson for Ukraine's armed forces has said that Russian Wagner group mercenaries withdrawing from the city of Bakhmut are being replaced with regular Russian airborne and motorized troops. Serhiy Cherevadii, a spokesperson for Ukrainian forces fighting in the region, said Kyiv has gathered information on the new units being deployed to the Bakhmut area and claimed that replacement forces have already suffered significant losses. The city finally fell to Russian forces last week after months of combat. Rotational measures are taking place there primarily because of the large losses of the Wagner criminal group, Cherevadii said, according to news outlet Ukrinform. They are forced to do it. Units of the occupiers' airborne troops and motor rifle units are entering. We know their names, we know their commanders and their combat potential. Those formations arriving have already suffered significant losses and are largely staffed by newly mobilized troops, the spokesperson said. For the most part, this is already the second or third composition of their personnel, Cherevadii said. Russian forces last week celebrated the capture of Bakhmut, which has reportedly been entirely destroyed during 9 months of intense fighting. The city has become synonymous with Russia's grinding, attritional warfare in the eastern Donbass region. Tens of thousands of soldiers on both sides are thought to have been killed in the fighting over the small city. Kyiv has continued to send reinforcements to the area in recent months, despite continued assertions from Ukrainian and NATO officials that the city was not strategically important. The battle has also served as a stage for the struggle for influence between top Russian military officials and Wagner chief Yevgeny Prigozhin. He has repeatedly accused Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov of intentionally undersupplying Wagner units. Prigozhin said at the start of May that he would pull his troops out of the city because, in the absence of ammunition, they are doomed to senseless death. He later reversed the decision when fresh supplies were directed to Wagner forces. Following Bakhmut's fall last week, Prigozhin said that his mercenaries had begun withdrawing and were handing over positions to Russian regular troops. Pavel Luzin, a Russian political analyst and visiting scholar at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, told Newsweek that Wagner's apparent withdrawal can be seen through a lens of constant political jockeying within Kremlin power structures. The friction between Prigozhin and the regular Russian military, Luzin said, is a classic interagency bureaucratic conflict typical for authoritarian systems. Prigozhin is a front man, a manager of the state-sponsored mercenaries within the Russian political system.
And there's more to read on that, not a whole lot more, a few more paragraphs. I'm going to my next one now. Let me know what you think about stuff here. This from Business Insider. Putin ally blusters about nuclear weapons for everyone who joins Russia and Belarus.
Alexander Lukashenko said there will be nuclear weapons for everyone who joins Russia and Belarus. The comment came after Belarus agreed to host Russia's tactical nuclear weapons. Vladimir Putin has repeatedly threatened nuclear escalation since invading Ukraine. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko on Sunday promised nuclear weapons to any nation who supports his country and Russia. Lukashenko, a close ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin, made the comment Sunday after Belarus agreed to host Russia's tactical nuclear weapons. It's very simple. You have to join the union between Belarus and Russia, and that's it. There will be nuclear weapons for everyone, Lukashenko said in a clip aired on Russian state TV, according to NBC News. We need to strategically understand that we have a unique chance to unite, Lukashenko added. He was responding to a comment made Wednesday by the president of Kazakhstan, who said Russia and Belarus are so close that even nuclear weapons are shared between the two. Russia has the largest stockpile of nuclear weapons in the world. Belarus does not actually have its own nuclear weapons, having given them all to Russia in the 1990s after the fall of the Soviet Union. Putin has issued escalating nuclear threats since invaded Ukraine in February last year. But the mounting threats have led some adversaries to shrug him off, doubting he would actually resort to using nuclear weapons, insiders John Wagner previously reported. Belarus agreed to host Moscow's nuclear weapons last week. Alexander Volfovich, State Secretary of Belarus Security Council, said Sunday the deal was meant to deter aggression from the West after the US and its NATO allies continue to provide military aid to Ukraine. The agreement comes as Ukraine continues to prepare for a highly anticipated counteroffensive supported by US and NATO-supplied weapons.
Okay, so any nation that join Belarus and Russia will get free nuclear weapons. I think he's thinking that, if one of these countries that gets the weapons, if they shoot them off by accident, then he won't have been charged for starting the war. That's my idea about it. Tell me what you think. Let me go to the next one here. This one here from the Associated Press. Possible Putin trip to spotlight as Russia-China foreign minister set for meeting in South Africa.
Johannesburg, AP, the Russian and Chinese foreign ministers are expected to meet with their counterparts from the BRICS economic bloc in Cape Town on Thursday, a precursor to a larger summit of developing nations leaders in South Africa in August that Russian President Vladimir Putin may attend while under indictment by the International Criminal Court. South Africa has suggested without saying explicitly that it won't arrest Putin if he decides to travel for the main BRICS summit in Johannesburg, despite being obliged to do so as a signatory to the ICC's Rome Treaty. BRICS is a bloc of emerging economies made up of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and their leaders, including China's Xi Jinping, have been invited to the August 22-24 summit. Any Putin trip, and the Kremlin hasn't said if he will attend, would focus more attention on South Africa's relationship with Moscow. There are clear concerns in the West that Africa's most developed economy is aligning with Russia and pulling other developing countries along with it at a time of heightened global tensions.
You can read the rest of this in my description box if you like. Let me go to the next one. This from USA Today. IRS whistleblower alleges removal of entire investigation team from Hunter Biden probe.
Washington, a whistleblower at the Internal Revenue Service, which is investigating Hunter Biden for potential tax violations, told lawmakers Monday his entire team was removed from the probe, according to a letter from his lawyers obtained by USA Today. The letter said the IRS Criminal Supervisory Special Agent was informed that he and his entire investigative team are being removed from the ongoing and sensitive investigation of the high-profile, controversial subject about which our client sought to make whistleblower disclosures to Congress. The Justice Department informed the whistleblower about the change. IRS Commissioner Daniel Werfel had testified on April 27 at the House Ways and Means Committee that no one at the agency would be retaliated against. Start the day smarter. Get all the news you need in your inbox each morning. I can say without hesitation there will be no retaliation for anyone making an allegation or a call to a whistleblower hotline, he said. Lawyers for the undisclosed whistleblower disagreed. However, this move is clearly retaliatory and may also constitute obstruction of a congressional inquiry, said the letter from Tristan Levitt, president of Empower Oversight, a group representing whistleblowers, and Mark Lytle, a partner at Nixon Peabody. Our client has a right to make disclosures to Congress, the letter added. Any attempt by any government official to prevent a federal employee from furnishing information to Congress is also a direct violation of long-standing appropriations restriction. President Joe Biden said he would leave decision-making in criminal cases to the Justice Department, and he has, according to White House spokesman Ian Sams. The case is being investigated by Delaware U.S. Attorney David Weiss, who was appointed by former President Donald Trump and who hasn't announced any charges yet. Since he took office and consistent with his campaign promise that he would restore the independence of the Justice Department when it comes to decision-making in criminal investigations, President Biden has made clear that this matter would be handled independently by the Justice Department, under the leadership of a U.S. attorney appointed by former President Trump, free from any political interference by the White House, Sam said. He has upheld that commitment. The IRS issued a statement Monday that under federal law the agency can't comment on specific taxpayer matters, but that the agency is deeply committed to protecting the role of whistleblowers. As IRS Commissioner Danny Werfel has stated, we will not tolerate retaliation against any IRS employee making a whistleblower allegation, the agency statement said. When suggestions of wrongdoing are raised, we work with all appropriate parties, including the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration, to ensure the integrity of the whistleblower process is safeguarded.
And there's more to read on that if you want to read the rest of it. I don't think any whistleblowers is safe. And, you know, Hunter Biden, they haven't got him yet because of Joe Biden. He's using his power to keep the IRS and FBI away from him, and that's should be a criminal offense. Joe Biden need to be locked up in prison with his son, is what I say. Let me go to the next one here. Just from USA Today. GOP Rep Nancy Mace blasts Biden McCarthy debt ceiling deal. Republicans got outsmarted.
Representative Nancy Mace, Republican South Carolina, is denouncing the debt limit deal struck by House Republicans and President Joe Biden, targeting government spending and other elements of the agreement. Washington is broken, the South Carolina lawmaker tweeted Tuesday morning. Republicans got outsmarted by a president who can't find his pants. I'm voting no on the debt ceiling debacle because playing the DC game isn't worth selling out our kids and grandkids, she added. Mace accused the deal of normalizing record-high spending started during the pandemic. The deal caps annual discretionary spending for 2 years, keeping non-defense funding levels roughly flat next year and raising it by 1% in 2025. Mace also argued that the bill doesn't actually set a debt limit. Rather, it suspends the debt limit entirely until January 2, 2025, and there is no actual amount capping the debt ceiling, she shared. The deal raises the debt limit on how much the government can borrow until 2025. Mace also criticized other elements of the deal, including funding cuts to the Internal Revenue Service and work requirements provisions for some aid programs. The Republican lawmaker called for additional cuts and stronger limitations, saying Washington was and always will be lousy at spending Americans' tax dollars. It's not the first time Mace has been called out her Republican colleagues. The lawmaker last month urged fellow GOP lawmakers to find a middle ground on abortion rights in the country and no longer be silent on gun violence.
Okay, what I think Biden should stop. This is all Biden's fault. He should stop spending money throwing it at other countries while his own people is just living on the streets. Biden don't care about the Americans. We know that. Oh, man. Let me go to the next one. This is from Market Watch. The debt ceiling deal. This clause is bad for Social Security.
Brett Aarons is Roy. If there were no tax cheats in America, there would be no Social Security crisis. Benefits could be paid, and payroll taxes kept the same, for the next 75 years. That's not me talking. That's math. It comes from the number crunchers at the Social Security Administration and the Internal Revenue Service. And it explains why those of us who support Social Security should be pounding the table in outrage over one clause of the Biden-McCarthy debt ceiling deal, the part where the president has to retreat from his crackdown on tax cheats just so McCarthy and the House Republicans would agree to prevent America defaulting on its debts. It's just 2 years since the administration got into law an extra $80 billion for the IRS to beef up enforcement. That was supposed to include hiring an estimated 87,000 IRS agents. Okay, so nobody likes paying taxes and nobody likes the IRS. Cue the inevitable critiques of an IRS tax army, and so on. But this isn't about whether taxes should be higher or lower. It's about whether everyone should pay the taxes that they owe. After all, if we're going to cut taxes, shouldn't they apply to those of us who obey the laws as well as those who don't? Or do we just support the Tax Cuts for Criminals Act? Why would any voter rally around a platform of "I stand with tax cheats"? The Congressional Budget Office calculated that the extra funding for the IRS would have reduced the deficit because it would more than pay for itself. But it's now been cut by an estimated $21 billion out of $80 billion. If this seems abstract, consider the context and how it affects you and your retirement, and the retirements of everyone you know. Social Security is now running at an $80 billion annual deficit. That's the amount benefits are expected to exceed payroll taxes this year. So say the Social Security Administration's trustees. Next year, that deficit is expected to top $150 billion. By 2026, we're looking at $200 billion and rising. The trust fund will run out of cash by 2034, and without extra payroll taxes we'll have to slash benefits by a fifth or more. Over the next 75 years, says the Congressional Budget Office, the entire funding gap for the program will average about 1.7% of gross domestic product per year. Meanwhile, how much are tax cheats stealing from the rest of us? A multiple of that. According to the most recent estimates from the IRS, tax cheats steal about $470 billion a year. And that figure is 4 years out of date, relating to 2019. That's the figure after enforcement measures. Oh, and the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration says that's a lowball number. But it still worked out at around 12% of all the taxes people were supposed to pay, including payroll taxes. And around 2.3% of GDP. Over the next 10 years, based on similar ratios to GDP, that would come to another $3.3 billion. Sure, Social Security's trust fund is theoretically separate from the rest of Uncle Sam's finances. But that's an accounting issue, a distinction without a difference. Social Security is America's retirement plan. Few could retire in dignity without it. Yet it is facing a fiscal crisis. By 2034, without changes, the program will be forced to cut benefits, drastically. Some people want to cut benefits. Others want to raise the retirement age, which also means cutting benefits. Others want to raise taxes on benefits, which also means cutting benefits. Others want to hike payroll taxes either on all of us or, initially, only on very high earners. At last, just 40 or so years out of date, some are starting to talk about investing some of the trust fund like nearly every other pension plan in the world, in high-returning stocks instead of just low-returning treasury bonds. It is hard for me to believe that it's now almost 16 years since I first wrote about this ridiculously obvious fix and, yes, I've been boring readers on the subject ever since, including here and most recently here, and, no, I have no plans to stop. But if investing some of the trust fund in stocks is a no-brainer, so, too, is insisting everyone obey the law and pay the taxes they actually owe each year. I mean, shouldn't we do that before we think about raising taxes even further on those who abide by the law? How could anyone object? Any party that believes in law and order would support enforcing law and order on tax evasion. And any party of fiscal conservatism would support measures, like tax enforcement, to narrow the deficit. And, actually, any party that truly supported lower taxes for all would be tough on tax evasion. It is precisely this $500 billion in evasion by a small, scofflaw minority that forces the rest of us to pay more. We have, quite literally, a tax on obeying the law. One of the many arguments in favor of taxing assets or wealth, instead of just income, is that enforcement would be easier and evasion much harder. Washington, D.C., seems to be a place where people come up with complex proposals just so they can avoid the simple, fair ones.
Okay, and that's all I got on that one there. I'm going to my next one here now. This from Business Insider. How the waterbed effect is costing you at the grocery store.
Walmart uses its size to negotiate low prices with its food company suppliers. But that habit creates a waterbed effect, putting pressure on small grocers, an NYT opinion says. Grocery stores have been consolidating for decades, creating major players like Walmart and Kroger. Walmart is known for getting the absolute best prices and terms from its suppliers. But that approach might indirectly affect the smaller grocers it competes with, an opinion piece in the New York Times highlights. Companies like General Mills and Kraft Heinz make a huge chunk of their sales through Walmart alone, giving the Arkansas-based retailer leverage when it comes to negotiating prices or setting the terms of supply deals. Stacy Mitchell, an executive director at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, wrote in a piece for the New York Times published on Monday. But the suppliers have to make up that money elsewhere, and they often turn to small, local grocers, Mitchell said. So when Walmart demands special deals, suppliers can't say no, Mitchell wrote. And as suppliers cut special deals for Walmart and other large chains, they make up for the lost revenue by charging smaller retailers even more, something economists call the waterbed effect. Walmart did not immediately respond to a request for comment from Insider. The waterbed effect or phenomenon has been used to explain a wide range of systems, from carbon dioxide emissions to computer code. The basic principle is by pushing down one part of a system, another part of the system will pop up, much like a waterbed. For the food industry, the consequences of the waterbed effect have included consolidation and less competition, Mitchell wrote. It has driven independent grocers out of business and created food deserts, she wrote in the Times. The grocery industry has become more consolidated over the last few decades. Walmart commanded about 1/4 of U.S. grocery sales in 2021, according to Euromonitor. Kroger represented about 8%, followed by Albertsons at just under 5%. That consolidation is set to continue, with Kroger and Albertsons seeking federal approval for a merger worth $24.6 billion. The subject of grocery consolidation was a concern to small grocers before the most recent merger proposal. In January 2022, the U.S. House of Representatives held a committee hearing on competition in the U.S. food supply chain in 2022. Michael Needler, CEO of Fresh Encounter, a grocery chain with about 100 stores in the eastern U.S., described Walmart as legendary for its ability to set terms for suppliers during the hearing. Walmart uses its size to set prices with suppliers and demand that they meet other criteria, such as on-time delivery rates, Needler said. When a customer can threaten that much of your sales in one stroke, you have to listen, Needler said in a testimony, which he made on behalf of the National Grocers Association, a trade group for small supermarkets. Smaller grocers, by contrast, can't flex the same muscle, leading to worse terms with the same suppliers. The view from where the independent grocer sits is this: America's food supply chain problems are a result of increasing concentration and unchecked buyer power by dominant retail chains who force suppliers to discriminate against independent grocery, Needler said. Independent grocers represent up to 1/3 of U.S. grocery sales, according to a 2021 estimate from the National Grocers Association. But that share has declined for years. After the great financial crisis of 2008 and 2009, for instance, the number of independent grocery stores leveled off, and the group lost market share to larger rivals, according to a 2017 report from the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Yeah, Walmart, they can make the suppliers sell the supplies for less, charging the other grocery stores more. I told people that for years when I worked at Walmart. You know, Walmart is a monopoly, is what they are. That's why I try to get my business to smaller stores as much as possible. If the smaller store don't have it, then I go to Walmart. I'll pay more, just to keep the smaller stores going. Anyway, let me go to the next one here. This from Den Garden. Man shares easiest hack for growing endless potatoes.
Safe to say, @Sejesmoke Survival is the ultimate potato growing expert. If you've been looking to level up your crop growing this year, look no further than this TikTok page. In this video, @Sejesmoke Survival tells us exactly what to do in order to grow more potatoes than we might be able to handle. Not a bad problem to have. The main element of growing potatoes is making sure they retain a ton of moisture. That is why this gardening expert recommends using hay as a tool for growing these veggies. Taking a potato that has already begun to show some sprouts, you're going to lay that in the soil and then cover it up with a large amount of hay. He recommends making sure the hay is at least 6 inches deep over the potato. You also don't need to bury the potato, you can just leave it on the dirt. Next, you're going to water it thoroughly and you are all set. Why does this work? The straw from the hay will insulate the ground and keep the potato moist and growing. Even if you have poor soil, this trick will work due to the hay's natural nutrient-full properties. The microbes in your soil will break down the hay, decomposing it right on top of your potato plant, explains at Secessionist Survival. If you want to transport any existing potato plants, all you have to do is dig them up around the roots, spread a hole in the hay, and nestle the plant down, tucking the hay in around it. Water it and it will be good to go. But what if you don't have access to any hay nearby? Don't worry. This gardener says you can easily cut down any native grass around the area and substitute that as the hay, which is a method known as slash-mulching. When it comes to harvest time, all you'll need to do is move the plant aside and you'll have a ton of potatoes.
Okay, and what we did, we put down some cardboard, to keep the weeds down. Then we put some, we bought some soil, and we put that over the, we bought seed potatoes, and we put that over the potatoes and put hay over that, straw. And we keep it watered down. Let's see what this video says here.
I grew more than 300 pounds of potatoes using this method, and it couldn't be simpler. All you gotta do is take your potato, take one that's sprouting like this if you can, put a whole bunch of hay on the ground, dig a hole in the hay, put the potato down, and cover it up. Water it in good, and you're gonna get a big potato plant and a huge yield of potatoes. Now when it comes time to harvest, all you gotta do is move the plant aside, spread the hay, and you're gonna find a whole mess of potatoes. I put this hay down a couple weeks ago and watered it really well so it can start breaking down and releasing those nutrients into the soil. Even if you're starting with fresh hay, all you gotta do is move the hay aside until you get to the dirt, place your potato on the dirt. That's all, no digging, and cover that sucker up. Use a lot of hay. You want it to be like 6 inches deep. Water it really good the first time, then it'll be good for weeks. Now the reason why this works is because the straw insulates the ground so well and keeps it moist so the potato can keep growing. But this even works in poor soil because hay is full of nutrients, and the microbes in the soil start breaking down the hay, decomposing it so it makes a natural compost right on top of your potato plant. When I harvested last year, I missed a couple of the red potatoes, so they overwintered and now they're growing up again. So I'm actually just going to transplant these ones to where my potato patch will be this year. All you got to do to start a plant here is move the hay, put your plant down.
And but anyway, we're growing our own potatoes this year, and we're going to probably keep doing it. Potato price been going up a lot. And let me go to the next one. This one here from Delishably. Foolproof egg cracking technique is nothing short of mind-blowing.
The Arena Media Brands, LLC and respective content providers to this website may receive compensation for some links to products and services on this website. Do you struggle to crack an egg without breaking the yolk? If so, this unique method might be exactly what you've been looking for. TikTok content creator at Cooking Old Fred shows us how to crack an egg like no one else ever has. It looks like fun. The kids might enjoy making breakfast with this technique, too. Click here to watch the video. This is so funny. He begins by showing us how easy it is to break the yolk when we are cracking open an egg. And if this is frequently a problem for you, he has a way to solve it. He takes his egg and simply drops it over the pan into the hot skillet and allows it to crack open. He picks up the pieces of the shell and shows us he has a perfectly set egg. It's now ready to be fried however you like it. Although this isn't a problem we face, we want to see if this works. Why not? It might even help to relieve a little of stress. If it works, it could be a hilarious way to make eggs in front of visiting house guests, too. The audience had faith in this unusual procedure. Viewer at Smokey commented, "I love this guy, he's always smiling and cooks awesome things." So true. Viewer at biggest_tsuops_fan said, "This guy is a legend. He really is." Viewer at DAV7ed remarked, "If this works I will do something very dramatic." Too funny. We believe in what he tells us, so we're confident this is going to work out pretty well. Perhaps we, too, will have to do something dramatic, when it does.
Okay, now I'm going to show you the video they're talking about. So all he does is just drop the egg in the pan, and this yolk is still there, none busted. And I might try that, because I always get a lot of busted yolks, when I break an egg open. And let me go to the next one here. This from the Cool Down. There's a surprising cause behind the scent you smell after it rains.
There are few better pleasures than the scent that hits our noses after it rains, particularly in the summer months, when rain seems to take on an extra aromatic, earthy smell. People love the smell of rain so much that various household brands, including H&M and Marc Jacobs, have sought to copy it with their perfumes. But even better than this smell are the symbiotic relationships in nature that produce it. The term petrichor was coined in 1964 to describe the smell, from the Greek words petra, for stone, and ichor, for the golden fluid that flows in the veins of Greek gods, according to the website of the Met Office, the National Meteorological Service for the UK. What is petrichor? Petrichor is the earthy scent that can be detected after it rains. It's not the smell of rain itself but an odor that is released when rain droplets fall on warm, dry earth. More specifically, the petrichor smell is emitted by a chemical called geosmin, produced by soil microbes such as the bacteria Streptomyces. The human nose can detect even the tiniest amounts of geosmin, at concentrations of just 5 parts per trillion. When rain hits the ground, plant oils in the soil mix with geosmin and shoot into the air like an aerosol spray, therefore blending with ozone to create that lovely signature scent. Why is petrichor important? Petrichor doesn't just smell good. It's also vital to the survival of the Streptomyces bacteria, which use it to attract small soil organisms, who, like humans, are big fans of geosmin's distinctive scent. The smell of geosmin attracts insects and arthropods like springtails, which geosmin spores attach to. The spores are then carried away to begin a new Streptomyces colony elsewhere. Streptomyces is crucial for stimulating plant growth and improving soil health. By assisting plant survival, petrichor plays an indirect role in improving plant growing conditions. The microbe Streptomyces is considered a plant growth promoting rhizobacteria, PGPR, which is a type of microorganism that enhances nutrient availability for plants' roots. PGPRs also have antibiotic and antifungal properties, staving off soil pathogens that might harm growing plants' health. The agriculture industry is increasingly considering using Streptomyces as a natural, chemical-free way to improve soil health and increase crop yield. Streptomyces can help undo the damage humans have done to soil and water through degrading pesticides and hazardous metals. By removing metals from water sources, Streptomyces improves the water quality used in farming. The use of many organochlorine pesticides is widely banned throughout the world, but solutions are still needed to remove pollutants that already exist in our environment. Petrichor could connect with one such solution.
And that's all I got for you on that one there. I'm going to my next one here. And this is from Delishably. Clever trick for cooking bacon prevents splatter and burns. You ever get the splatter and burns? I do.
The Arena Media Brands, LLC and respective content providers to this website may receive compensation for some links to products and services on this website. Cooking bacon in the oven is a great way to prepare a large amount at once. It also prevents the splatter from burning our arms and coating the stove. However, it's not always practical, particularly if you only want a few pieces at a time. TikTok content creator at That 40-Year Guy shows us how to make this breakfast favorite on the stove, without an injury or a mess to clean up. Click here to watch the video. This is so smart. Why have we never thought to do this before? He explains if we want to prepare our bacon on the stovetop without all the splatter, all we need to do is use a large pot to cook it in. Makes sense. Using bacon that was cut in half lengthwise, he shows us it works perfectly. No mess. No burns. And best of all, no waiting for the oven to preheat on a busy morning. So simple and yet so darn brilliant. After draining the fat, scrambling a few eggs in the larger pot should be easy enough to do. Although, it might make frying an egg over easy a bit more tricky. The audience loved this idea, but they also found a problem with his lesson. Many expressed their concern over throwing away the grease, with one commenting, "You had me till you threw away the liquid gold." It hurt our hearts a little, too. We like to save it for making bacon chocolate chip cookies. While others said they used it in green beans, cornbread, cabbage, and fried rice. Yum! Next time we are preparing a few strips of bacon, we'll try making it this way. We will, of course, save the golden grease when we are done.
Yeah, I always throw my grease away, dispose of it. But he has a neat way of showing it. We're going to watch the video here.
You're telling me for 40 years of frying bacon, I don't have to cook my arms along with it? Ain't no way. Whenever I cook bacon, half the time it spits and it spatters all over me. I've got little burns everywhere. I'm probably doing something wrong, I know. I got a half pack of bacon. Got a big pot. I'm gonna break it off piece by piece and put it in there. All right, she's cooking. But I ain't getting burned at all. All right, the bacon's done. It looks perfect. Got my little aluminum foil boat to put my bacon grease in so I can throw it away.
It looks like easier way than the way I do it, in the skillet. But anyway, might try that next time. I cook a whole pound to make 4 BOTs. Might just cut the whole pound in half. Let me go to the next one here. This will be my last one. This is from Business Insider. I moved from the U.S. to Sweden after struggling with burnout. Now I have 6 weeks of paid vacation per year and rarely work overtime. Thought this was interesting.
Tess Meyer, a 30-year-old consultant from California, moved to Sweden after struggling with burnout. Now she rarely works overtime, gets 6 weeks of paid vacation a year, and got a free master's. But it took her 2 years to secure a full-time job and her salary is lower than it was in the US. This story is part of a series called Millennial World, which seeks to examine the state of the generation around the globe. This As Told to essay is based on an interview with Tess Meyer, a 30-year-old consultant from California and author of the blog Sweden and Me. She has chosen to omit the name of her employer due to the company's media policy. The following has been edited for length and clarity. Full screen. 1 of 10 photos in gallery copy. I'm originally from Burbank, California, and moved to Sweden 4.5 years ago. My partner and I currently live in Malmö, a city on the southernmost tip of the country 30 minutes away from Copenhagen, Denmark. Before this, I was living in the US working 50 hours a week and feeling burned out. When I was 23 years old, I left my corporate job at a company I'd been with for 4 years and moved back in with my parents. That's when I started researching happiness. If you type in happy into Google, Scandinavian countries are consistently ranked as the happiest countries in the world. So in 2016, I decided to come out to the Nordic region and spent 2 weeks traveling around to Copenhagen, Stockholm, and Helsinki to figure out if I could see myself living there someday. I connected to the way of life and the values of Swedish society, specifically, the focus on sustainability and not letting stress rule your life. The work-life balance here is incredible. It's not about working late to get that gold star. In Sweden, if you work late, your boss might flag that your workload is too high, or that you're not capable enough to do your work within work hours. As a Swedish resident, I was able to get a free master's degree. My partner, who is also American, works in the video game industry. Back in the US, he worked for PlayStation. They don't have an office in Sweden, but a lot of other video game studios do, so he was able to get a job offer pretty quickly. His company sponsored both of our residencies and work visas, so we had the ability to live and work in Sweden full-time. Once we moved here, we went to the immigration and tax agencies and filled out all the paperwork. It took around 3 months to get everything settled. I started looking for work, but ended up going back to school. I applied twice for a 1-year master's program at the local university. The first time, I applied as an American resident and got accepted. It would have been about $13,000, which isn't that bad by American standards. But then I applied again a year later as a Swedish resident with a Swedish social security number. The same program accepted me again, except this time, it would be completely free. It took me 2 years to find a full-time job. After graduation, it was difficult to find a job. It took me 2 years. I have both a bachelor's and a master's degree from the US and a second master's degree from Sweden. I'm also a native English speaker, which is attractive to a lot of companies here. It's incredibly tough to get into the Swedish job network. It's about who you know, and culture fit is really important to the companies here. I eventually was able to get a job at a major consulting firm, where I've been for 2.5 years now. I met the team at a university career fair, where they invited me to lunch and an informal interview, and then I formally applied. So it was very much about who I knew and my relationship with them before I even submitted an application. But before that, I had probably put out about 100 applications and networked as much as I could.
And there's more to read on the F1, read the rest of it. My salary is lower than the U.S., but the cost of living is affordable. Her low salary her low salary over there is more than what I make now, you know. It says I rarely work overtime. Employee well-being is prioritized. I get 6 weeks of paid vacation every year. I use it all. Well, you can read the rest of this in my description box if you want. If I knew about this, I would have tried it myself, you know. Anyway, that's all I got for you today. I tried to have news for everybody. And remember, I am Alan for today's news. I'll be bringing you world news, interesting news to keep you entertained, and news to keep you informed. And I hope you like what I had. Don't forget to like, subscribe, at least come back once in a while. And until next time, thanks for watching.